What if binge eating isn't a lack of discipline, but a trauma response? Hi everyone, my name is Kylie Rose. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. Today we will be talking about binge eating disorder and about what that is. And so this is going to be part one of a several part series. The first of which is to go over what binge eating disorder actually is. Binge eating disorder is one of the most misunderstood conditions because from the outside it just looks like overeating or emotional eating or a lack of discipline, as people say, but clinically it is actually very different. According to the DSM-5, recurrent episode of binge eating. An episode of binge eating is characterized by both of the following: eating in a discrete period of time within any 2-hour period, an amount of food that is definitively larger than most people would eat in a similar period of time under similar circumstances, the sense of lack of control over eating during the episode, feeling that one cannot stop eating or control what or how much one is eating. Criteria 2. Binge eating episodes are associated with 3 or more of the following. 1. Eating more rapidly than normal, eating until feeling uncomfortably full, eating large amounts of food when not feeling physically hungry, eating alone because of being embarrassed by how much one is eating, feeling disgusted with oneself, depressed, or very guilty after the overeating. Criteria 3, marked distress regarding the binge eating. Criteria 4, binge eating occurs on average at least 2 days a week for 6 months, or at least 1 day a week for 3 months. Criteria 5, the binge eating is not associated with the regular use of inappropriate compensatory behavior, purging, fasting, excessive exercise, which you may see in things like bulimia nervosa, and not eating at all, which is anorexia. And so the DSM-5 does not include a severity grading scale. So it's graded as follows in clinical practice. Mild is 1 to 3 episodes per week, moderate 4 to 7 episodes per week, severe 8 to 13 episodes per week, extreme 14 or more episodes per week. I got a little bit tired of filming myself because it's a pain in the butt to edit at the moment. I'm still learning, so switching to voiceover for the rest of this. So we're going to go over now what exactly is happening in the brain. So before we dive into the binge eating disorder elements of the brain, let's look at how regular appetite works. So the hypothalamus acts as the main appetite regulatory center via a range of peptides and pathways to the reward centers. Food stimulates the vagus nerve lining to the GI tract to initiate negative feedback, i.e. satiation. Ghrelin is produced in the upper regions of the stomach and promotes hunger, which is the hunger hormone. So PPY, PP, CCK, GLP-1, and OXM reduce food intake, and let's take a quick second to kind of go over those. According to the National Institutes of Health, these are gut hormones that are naturally occurring. They play crucial roles in regulating appetite, digestion, and energy balance by signaling to the brain that the body is full. GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide, is secreted in the intestine, simulates insulin release, limits glucagon secretion, and slows stomach emptying. It's also the foundation for widely used anti-obesity medications and increases satiety. CCK is released in the upper small intestines after eating fats and proteins. It aids digestion by stimulating pancreatic enzymes and gallbladder contraction while acting on the brain to signal fullness and stop eating. The PYY peptide is secreted in the lower intestine and it slows down the stomach emptying and intestinal motility. It signals satiety to the hypothalamus to reduce their food intake. And OXM is the hormone that's produced in the intestine, and it also suppresses appetite, promoting satiety, helps increase energy expenditure. And pancreatic polypeptide, which is released by the pancreas, reduces appetite and regulates gastric emptying. In people with binge eating disorder, the primary difference compared to the baseline in healthy individuals is an impaired satiety threshold. while healthy people experience a predictable rhythmic spike in these gut hormones during a meal that tells the brain to stop eating, people with BED experience blunted, delayed, or dysregulated hormonal signaling. Just going back to our little graph here. Leptin is produced by adipose tissues and reduces hunger. The nucleus tractus solitarius, NTS, metabolic rate, gastric emptying and feeding. And then, of course, you can see just the entire system in irregular. So we're going to jump back to the binge eating brain and body. In baseline healthy controls, eating a meal triggers a sharp, rapid post-meal rise in CCK, GLP-1, and PYY. This response acts as a brake to terminate the meal. In binge eating disorder, the post-food release of these are significantly blunted or delayed. Because these hormones don't rise normally, the brain does not receive the I am full signal in a timely manner. The biological lag contributes directly to the feeling out of control with binge eating. To truly understand the body, we're going to look at the biological difference between BED and healthy individuals in a fasting state, which are less clear-cut, as baseline values are heavily influenced by BMI. So these hormones remain at steady baseline levels in healthy controls, but actually higher in individuals with BED compared to healthy individuals. But this is widely considered compensatory or a side effect of obesity rates rather than a functional hunger suppressant. But basically, the hormone is failing to spike correctly once food is consumed. Research has less about OXM, but since it works to suppress appetite and elevate energy expenditure, a generalized blunting of the pro-glucagon gene system is suspected in binge eating disorder. Pancreatic polypeptide shows a rapid release during and after meals in people with the binge eating type patterns. There's a response to the stretching of the stomach, showing that can be altered, which basically means that physical fullness doesn't translate into a chemical reaction for the brain to fire saying, I've been satiated. Which leads to the idea of the gut-brain disconnection, which is the major differentiator between these is how they interact with the brain's reward centers, which is really where the neuroscience is happening for binge eating disorder. So in people without BED, satiety hormones are successfully downregulating the reward value of food as a person eats, and it stops tasting or feeling as rewarding once healthy baseline thresholds are met. In people with BED, even when the gut hormones are present, neuroimaging is showing that there's a disconnection. We have a hyperreactivity in the brain's dopamine reward pathways when exposed to food. This heightened drive overrides the weakened, blunted chemical satiety signals coming from the gut, which is kind of a big part of the process, which we're going to get into next. So I want to talk about the mechanism of action of the actual binge eating cycle in the brain. And so I want to make it known that the most important thing to understand about binge eating disorder is that it is not a willpower problem. It is a biological survival strategy that I think is very similar to the fact that our fear of the dark or these things can be learned. Certain fear responses can be learned. So the type of binge eating disorder that I'm talking about is very specifically what I have a hypothesis that certain I'm not saying all of them, but I do think a lot of binge eating disorders may actually be caused or have relation to adverse childhood event scores being high, which can translate to higher patterns of complex PTSD diagnosis, things like this. And so when somebody has been through trauma, their brain and body get stuck in a fight or flight response. So binge eating then can become an automatic way that the body may try to calm itself down. So Trauma physically changes how the brain is wired. And so the amygdala, which is the brain's alarm system, is hyperactive. It stays on high alert, constantly scanning for danger. Second, the prefrontal cortex, which are the logical brakes of the brain, becomes underactive. So the part of the brain that says stop or think about this is going offline. Third, the hippocampus, the brain's memory keeper, weakens. It forgets that the danger is in the past, making the person feel like they are in danger right now. And step 2 is the physical feeling, somatic discomfort. Because the logical brain is kind of going offline or has gone offline, you don't just think your way out of anxiety or think your way out of the trigger. Instead, that emotional pain drops straight into the body, and people may handle this differently depending on who you are and how you process things. And so people describe this as a physical feeling of emptiness, hollowness, or extreme numbness in their stomach or chest. It feels deeply uncomfortable and the body demands immediate relief. Bring us to step 3, the reward system hijack. So to fix that awful physical feeling, the brain is going to look for the fastest rescue possible, which for many people could be high fat, high sugar comfort food. When the person starts eating, 2 things can happen. The brain floods with dopamine, which creates an intense focus on the food and tunes out the rest of the world, or at least can cope with it when we don't know how to regulate in a healthy way, which usually requires therapy. The brain releases endorphins, or natural painkillers, which creates a temporary feeling of numbness or relief, or for a little while, even however short, a sense of peace, because it's literally acting like an anesthetic to emotional and physical pain. Which leads to step 4, which is the autopilot habit. At first, the brain does this on purpose to feel better. It's a way to cope when you don't know how to cope. It's a way to deal with something that perhaps you were taught poor food skills as a child, perhaps nobody taught you, perhaps you learned that, or perhaps, for instance, some form of abuse made you feel like being in a bigger body was safer than a smaller body. And so you're coping with a reality, or you're coping with a sense of a lack of control, or just wanting to feel better. So in the beginning, it's not a habit, but over time, this loop moves into the part of the brain called the dorsal striatum, which literally controls habits. It literally can actually form pathways over time. So binge eating then becomes an automatic autopilot strategy once it's been done for so long without an intervention. The person isn't making a conscious choice to binge anymore. Their brain just automatically kicks into this habit whenever they get stressed or triggered. And a lot of times, without therapy, they might not even understand why what is going on is going on. And step 5, the stress hormones lock it in. And this constant stress of cortisol releasing and the flood of the hormone, the stress hormones, keeps the body agitated and creates an intense physical craving for quick energy, sugar, and fat. This locks the person in a trap. The stress hormones keep demanding the foods to cope that trigger the automatic habit loop in the first place. The brain has gone through so many changes after so many years that there's a real problem now that without medical attention causes very severe damage. And then the conclusion of that cycle, the only way to break that cycle, otherwise it stays looping, is that we have to stop treating binge eating as a moral failure. We have to treat the root cause. We need to fix what's going on in the brain. We need to be able to calm the body's alarm systems, regulate the hormone systems, kind of relearn a relationship with food, and turn the logical brain back online, and help people feel safe in their bodies again without needing food to numb that pain. And I guess in conclusion, the reason I wanted to do this series and the next episode will be about my personal experiences when I was diagnosed with it. so many years ago, and the things that I have found along the way, and I want to be the kind of person that is willing to showcase progress from a different angle. So for me and my business, it's about showcasing the patient to PhD process. It's about creating a community of real women. Not that what we see elsewhere isn't real, but I mean not Instagram ready, not after it's all done. Like, I'll do the work privately, but I'll share things that I've learned either in actual college, as I've pursued a double major in biobehavioral health and psychology with a minor in entrepreneurship, which is the reason I'm starting a YouTube channel to create this series and ultimately a community with a process of recovery that works without needing to take medication and mental health for mental health reasons. To apply also an academic level of study to even faith, being willing to be somebody who is a Christian content creator, but also somebody who's strongly academic and respects science and respect what it means to be a researcher. And to really have a series that is showcasing that journey from all of that, including recovery. The main point being recovery, and from my own recovery, the practice that will happen after I get a PhD. And if you liked this, if you could like and subscribe so you can stay tuned for the next episode, I would be grateful. And I would love to build the vision with you. And I would love it if you would come with me on the journey. Anyway, until next time, have a great day.